political stunt or a constitutional crisis. President Donald Trump has just challenged the legitimacy of Biden's pardons, rendering it void and of no effect. Legal battles ahead. But will the courts uphold Trump's claims? This and many more will be detailed in today's Flash News. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Tabitha Ako. Let's begin. In a bold and controversial claim, President Donald Trump declared that all pardons issued by former President Joe Biden are void, vacant, and of no further force or effect. Again, they were signed using an auto pen and not personally authorized by Biden. Trump's accusation made in a fiery Truth Social post suggests Biden had no knowledge of the pardons, particularly those granted to lawmakers from the House Select Committee on the January 6th Capitol riot. But does Trump have the legal grounds to challenge these pardons, or is this a strategic move to discredit his predecessor? Trump further alleged that the individuals involved in facilitating these pardons may have committed a crime and that an investigation into their actions should take place at the highest level. He pointed to what he called a 2-year witch hunt against him and other innocent people as part of the now disbanded January 6th committee, arguing that its members deleted key evidence. If Biden was unaware of these pardons, does this open the door for a legal challenge, or is Trump's claim legally baseless? The use of an auto pen, an automatic signature machine, has been a long-standing practice in presidential administrations, including those of Barack Obama and George Bush. However, Trump's claim that this renders Biden's pardons invalid and raises serious legal and constitutional questions. Wow. The Heritage Foundation's oversight project recently alleged that Biden's administration had heavily relied on an auto pen for official documents, suggesting his personal involvement in critical decisions may have been minimal. Meanwhile, when asked aboard Air Force One whether Biden's executive orders and pardons were signed via auto pen could be considered void, if it could consider void, Trump responded. Let's take a look.
I would say that they're null and void because I'm sure Biden didn't have any idea that it was taking place. And somebody was using an auto pen to sign off and to give pardon. I would say that they're null and void because I'm sure Biden didn't have any idea that it was taking place. And somebody was using an auto pen to sign off and to give pardon.
President Trump writes there, in the wake of this, legal experts are divided on whether a court would entertain such a challenge. While auto pen usage is not illegal, does it undermine the legitimacy of presidential actions when questions about personal authorization arises? Biden's January 20th statement, issued on the day he left office, granted pardons to high-profile figures, including General Mark Milley, Dr. Anthony Fauci, members of the January 6th Select Committee, and police officers who testified before the committee. Biden defended his decision by stating that these individuals served our nation with honor and distinction, and that they should not be targets of unjustified and politically motivated prosecutions. However, President Trump's challenge puts those pardons under intense political and legal scrutiny. If a court were to rule that Biden's use of an auto pen invalidates the pardons, Could this set a precedent for reversing past executive decisions, or would it simply be another chapter in the ongoing political battle between President Trump and former President Biden? Well, as we keep watching, President Trump remains focused while waiting on legal proceedings. Moving over to a recent development in the Middle East, in a dramatic escalation of violence, Israeli airstrikes on Gaza have killed 326 people, according to Palestinian health officials, shattering a fragile 2-month ceasefire with Hamas. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to intensify military action, citing Hamas' refusal to release Israeli hostages and its rejection of ceasefire proposals. But with 59 hostages still in captivity and civilian casualties mounting, is Israel's military response a strategic necessity or a dangerous escalation that risks wider conflict? Let's take a look at this video of what Benjamin's office is saying.
The Israeli Air Force initiated a series of attacks against Hamas targets in Gaza. We will show no mercy on our enemies. Let me be very clear. Israel will not stop until all of our hostages are back home. We will make it very clear to the Security Council that if they want to stop the war in Gaza, they have to ensure that the hostages are coming back to Israel. We are committed to bring them back.
Israel's UN ambassador there issued a statement warning that Israel would now act with increasing military strength against Hamas. Meanwhile, Gaza's health ministry run by Hamas reported that many of the victims were children, adding to the humanitarian crisis in the war-torn Strip. Hospitals already overwhelmed from 15 months of conflict are now struggling to manage the latest influx of casualties. With no clear path to renewed negotiations, does this mark the definitive end of diplomatic efforts to secure peace? Meanwhile, the Israeli military confirmed it had targeted dozens of Hamas positions and suggested that operations could soon extend beyond airstrikes, raising fears of an expanded ground offensive. The United Nations has condemned the violence, calling for an immediate reinstatement of the ceasefire to prevent further loss of life. UN humanitarian coordinator Muhammad Hadi described the situation as unconscionable. Meanwhile, Israel is preparing for potential retaliation, opening bomb shelters in Tel Aviv amid concerns of rocket attacks from Hamas or its allies in Yemen. The broader conflict continues to escalate, with hostilities spreading to Lebanon, Yemen, and Iraq. As the war threatens to engulf the region, will this latest escalation push the Middle East closer to a full-scale multi-front war? Well, the coming days will decide that. Moving over to a recent happening in India, authorities in Nagpur have enforced an indefinite curfew following violent clashes triggered by a Hindu group's demand to remove the tomb of Emperor Aurangzeb, a 17th century Mughal ruler. The unrest, which left at least 15 police officers injured, one in critical condition, has raised concerns over rising religious tensions in India. With historical grievances fueling present-day conflict, is this just another isolated incident or a sign of deeper divisions that could destabilize the country? The violence began on Monday when members of the Vishwa Hindu Parishad burned an effigy of Aurangzeb and his tomb, chanting slogans demanding its removal from the nearest city of Aurangabad. The group argues that the site should be replaced with a memorial honoring Maratha rulers, whom they view as historical adversaries of the Mughal emperor. Well, as tensions escalated, clashes broke out between Hindu and Muslim groups near a police station. Masked individuals, some wielding sharp weapons and bottles, were seen attacking officers and damaging vehicles, according to witnesses right there on your screen. The police, struggling to contain the violence, imposed a curfew to prevent further escalation. Maharashtra's Maharashtra's Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis condemned the unrest, ensuring law and order is maintained amidst the uproar. The VHP, which is ideologically linked to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party through its parent organization, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, denied any involvement in the violence. However, critics argue that such tensions reflect a broader pattern of religious polarization under Modi's leadership. While his government has consistently denied allegations of discrimination, accusations persist that it has not done enough to curb growing anti-Muslim rhetoric actions. As curfews and crackdowns become more common, is India heading toward a cycle of sectarian conflict that could threaten its social fabric and political stability? Well, bringing you to the climax of this report. This is a case of religious tensions which had erupted into violence, forcing authorities to impose strict curfews. India's deepening sectarian divide may be spiraling into a larger crisis, but then we hope the government restore peace and maintain order. Until next time, this is where we'll be drawing the curtain on today's Flash News. Remember, I'll be bringing you stories from the home front. After 5 months in captivity, the colonial divisional officer for Idabato, abandoned by the Bias regime, has regained his freedom. This report and many more with Onyi Opala at the top of our 8 p.m. Until then, do have a pleasant day.